All right, I'm just going to get this set up, ready to go. This show may get me thrown off the air. And you think I'm joking. Let's get this ready to go. Are you guys ready for this? All right, what's happening, gang? This is Steve with the Range Minded Podcast. Yeah, it's been a week. You probably heard if you follow the lives at all on Instagram. You'll understand I had a pretty chaotic last few days. If you don't follow us on Instagram or not, that's fine. No big deal. I mean, we'd love you to show up. But my father passed away this past Monday on the 13th. And then we had some other stuff going on through the weekend before that. Excuse me. It's been a pretty eventful, I guess we could say, eventful week. It's been kind of rough. So I didn't get a podcast out, understandably. At least hopefully you understand. Please forgive me. Things just happen. Life happens, and that's just the way it is. So as I was doing some show prep tonight, this show is going to be a little bit different than... Oh man, I got the burps. Excuse me. This show's going to be a little bit different than any of the other ones. I know normally we try to stay with the self-defense and that kind of stuff, and I guess maybe this stuff will still tie in, but this show could give me a lot of negative backlash. Not maybe necessarily from our standard listeners and viewers on YouTube, if you're watching on YouTube, but there might be some outside forces, let's just say, that really disagree with some of the content that I'm sharing. I'm going to do my best to tie it around to your personal defense and the defense of your family and defense of your sovereignty and defense of our country, because this, in my opinion, is the greatest country on God's green earth. Man, I got to turn down some stuff real quick because that sounds hideous. Is that better? Hopefully it sounds a little bit better. All right, let's jump into it. Now, I'm sure you guys have been paying attention to what has been going on in the United States over the last little while. I hope. Okay. Let's start with this story. And this is crazy. And I know you guys have been watching this, and I promise I'll bring this all around into a self-defense perspective. I promise you. Now, I imagine you guys are completely in the loop about the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment. And the stuff that is going on there is absolutely crazy. I was watching some videos, like I say, doing some show prep. In this stream, I don't know how far away it is from the train derailment. Honestly, it's on the internet, so who knows if it's real or not. We can only assume that it is, because the chemicals that are coming out of this train are nasty. Okay, well, maybe you're not aware of the derailment. Let's talk about it. Okay, so this train carrying several train cars of nasty chemicals. Let's see if I can find you which chemicals they are, just so we know. Let's see. Vinyl chloride was one of the gases. Oh man, I can't remember where I read it. Anyway, there are several nasty chemicals. And then when they're all together, right, some of them are flammable, some of them are not, but when you combine chemicals, just like when we were cleaning the house as kids, your mom ever said, don't mix the bleach and whatever else together because it's nasty. And maybe she didn't tell you that. I don't know. I never clean the house anyway, so what am I talking about? So one of the stuff catches on fire. It's a slow burn, so the authorities decide, hey, let's just do a controlled burn just to get rid of the stuff. So they light it on fire, even worse. And if you want to see some crazy pictures, just Google it. Google the East Palestine train derailment, and you'll find photos of some crazy looking stuff. It looks like a nuclear bomb had gone off. Just the plume of this thick black smoke, and then it's got black haze, at a certain level above the ground. Absolute crazy mess. It is awful. Stupid emails keep popping up. But of course, the EPA says, hey, don't worry about it. I'm sure everything's fine. We're burning off the chemicals. It's completely fine. But what we're getting reports of is a lot of the folks that live not far from where this happened, it's not fine. Their livestock is dying. I've read a report where they're pulling out, thousands and thousands of dead fish out of the stream. Some dude that raised foxes not far from there, all of his foxes are dying of mysterious reasons. It's nasty. It's nasty. This stuff is known to cause cancer. The chemicals that they're burning off, it is a disaster. And the EPA says there's nothing to worry about. It'll be fine. I saw a map last night of the potential contaminant area, and they had, where Ohio was, and then different gradients across the country, of what is going to be impacted. And it's nearly all of the United States will be impacted by some sort, in some way. Well, I guess you could call it fallout of this chemical, as it gets in the atmosphere, and then stuff rains and goes into the groundwater. Not good. Not good at all. Super sketchy. I mean, I don't know what to tell you guys. It's a mess. And once I opened this story, it was cascaded into a bunch of other stories that just blew my mind. So, yeah. So on February 14th, is when the train crashed, and there was 38 cars were derailed. Then a fire started, which damaged 12 other cars. Materials, so we already talked about vinyl chloride. A huge fire erupted, billowing smoke. Like, it is so bad. It's bad, super bad, pretty crazy. They're now showing that there are problems with soil and water testing. So I was listening to some stuff on the radio. It was either this morning or yesterday morning, about how expensive it is to get independent analysis done on the soils and water. $50,000 to get somebody over there to test it. When the EPA's we got our guys there, and it's not showing any kind of terrible contaminants. You should be fine, but you might want to leave your house just in case, type of thing. It is amazing what's going on. And so here, Department of Natural Resources in Ohio, they estimated that they they caught 3,500 dead fish just on the 8th of February. So obviously, so that was happening before. That doesn't make sense. So crazy, right? Craziness. Like I said, this took me down a rabbit hole of like what's going on in the world, because I heard of some other crazy things happening. And as I was looking around, I found another train derailment with cars containing hazardous materials. This time in Michigan, not far from Detroit. A train carrying hazardous materials derailed in Michigan Thursday morning. So, as of recording today is Thursday, so that was this morning. At least 6 cars were off the tracks at Van Buren Township, which is about 30 miles southwest of Detroit. Detroit's already a mess. And this does not help the situation, right? Sorry, I'm batting a bit of a cold. Officials say that only one of the train cars is carrying hazardous materials, as it is reported, showing no sign of leaking or damage. The local fire department says the derailment does not currently pose a danger to the public. It is a train car full of chemicals on its side, but there's nothing to worry about. This is the latest train derailment that fuels anxiety across the country. And then it references Ohio again. Again, the EPA, the chief of the EPA, is scheduled to visit with residents of East Palestine on Thursday, which is today, when they address concerns. Then it doesn't talk anymore about, in this particular news story, it doesn't talk anymore about what's going on in Michigan, just jumps back to Ohio, which, they didn't really talk about in the news for quite a while. You have to search for this. It's not like it just pops up in, on Fox News or CNN all that much. All right. That's got to be the end of it, right? It's crazy to have 2 toxic spills in one go round. Or is it? Look what else I found. This time it is not a train derailment, but it is a 5-acre fire in Florida, obviously in Florida, just outside of Kissimmee. There's some kind of a nursery supply plant that, I don't know if it produces plastic pots or, anyway, it does some kind of thing with pottery, plastic pots for nurseries. Mysteriously caught on fire. Started with 2 little pots and then didn't take very long to burn pallets and pallets of stuff. And now the entire plant is up in smoke, releasing toxic gases over the public. What the heck? What the heck? Firefighters are responding to a massive industrial fire in Kissimmee, Florida that broke out behind the manufacturer of a plastic nursery and greenhouse supplies just a few miles away from Walt Disney World. Oh, maybe it was Big Mickey. I don't know how to, Osceola County? I'll probably butchered that. Fire rescue officials say they responded to a call that came around 2 a.m. Thursday morning about a fire behind the nursery supply plant. And then it gives the address. Officials said about 2 acres of pallets that had plastic planters on them were ablaze. Oh, were set ablaze. I didn't read that part before when I read this. They were set ablaze. It wasn't an accident. No firefighters or civilians have yet been harmed as workers are evacuated from the area. So this one is definitely, at least preliminary investigations say, it was intentional. Now, surely that's got to be the end of it, right? No, it's not. Port of Catoosa reopens after chemical fire causes evacuation. The city of Catoosa braced for a potential disaster on Wednesday morning when its port played host to a chemical fire. As of Wednesday afternoon, the Tulsa Port Authority still wasn't sure what was inside the storage tank when it caught fire, but Port Director David Yarborough said that the responsible thing was to presume that the worst and err on the side of the caution. You know that we prepare for it, he said. Hope you don't have to happen. What? Hope you don't have it happen. There we go. Every now and then, though, something goes not according to plan, and just react. Wow. Another chemical fire. Now, surely, nothing else can go crazy in the United States, right? Or can it? I saw a report last night of another eggplant thing. Not eggplant, like purple, but no, like hatchery or whatever you want to call it. Another problem at a chicken place. Another problem. What the heck? And we just see these things nonstop, right? Nonstop. Seems like we just dealt with Chinese balloons and UFOs being shot down. They're not UFOs. In fact, I just saw a report where, well, everything is true anymore, right? That they were some kind of surveillance for weather things owned by private companies that we're just shooting down now because apparently we can't let anything slide by except a Chinese spy balloon across the whole United States, and then we shoot it down after it's over waters and, whatever. What about the endangered fish that they killed with that thing crashing into the ocean? What is going on in this country? And what does all this stuff have to do with your personal security? Now we talk about learning how to use a knife, learning how to use a gun, learning some kind of other martial art, whether it be jiu-jitsu or something like that. I would suggest jiu-jitsu. To defend yourself or your family or another innocent person. Right? And all that stuff is critical, absolutely. But how are you doing on your medical stuff? How are you doing on your your emergency planning? How about your food? Have you figured out your food problem? Look at all this stuff that's going to be coming down out of the sky because of that first story we talked about in New Palestine. If that gets into the food source, which it's going to get into the food stores in many parts of the country, they're either going to have to destroy all that food, or that food's going to go out into distribution, and we're all going to be consuming contaminated food. Is that a problem for you? Because it's a problem for me. What are you doing to defend yourself and your family from other adversarial things? Not just two-legged predators. What about when your well runs dry? If you have a well, if you live in the city and you're just running tap water, what happens if that water gets contaminated? What happens if the pumps go down in the city that you live in and there is no way to get water out of your tap? What happens if you live in a rural community? What if your power goes out? A lot of us use pumps, and those pumps take electricity. That's great if you have a well, as long as it's not contaminated. How are you going to get that water out of the ground? Have you built a pail bucket? Have you come up with some other way to pump water out of your well if your electricity goes out? All of these things are defense of your home. I promise you, you cannot defend yourself if you're hungry, if you're thirsty, or if you're dependent on somebody else for your food. Have you thought about this stuff yet? Have you ever worried about this stuff at all? Here's another one. Think of all this fallout from these chemicals in the sky. Have you considered how you're going to do like a clean room to get that stuff off of your skin? What about a gas mask? And all this stuff used to be so far-fetched and ridiculous. We used to only worry about this stuff like when I was a kid or before that, right? Nuclear war, Cold War, we're going to have a big problem with Russia. Once the wall fell in Germany and then communism kind of collapsed, we didn't worry about it anymore. Say what you want about Trump. Say what you want about Biden or Obama or Clinton. It doesn't matter who's president. They all make mistakes. They all make stupid decisions. Now, I know, I feel anyways that the guy that's currently occupying the White House that's the only thing he's doing. Because he's failing at keeping the country safe, in my opinion. Failing. I don't know if he has ulterior. I don't know if he has motives outside of protecting the United States. But he sure doesn't look like he is taking care of, his oath of office. But what if it's worse than that? Now, I told you I was going to keep this all kind of in a self-defense realm, but as I went down the rabbit hole, and as I was reading stories, it got so much worse. Now, I'm not trying to say, I'm a conspiracy theorist, I'm a doomsdayer. No, I'm not a doomsdayer, but I'm a realist. And I can see how close the crap is to the fan. What if it's all a distraction? I mean, they are playing with lives, igniting a controlled burn on toxic chemicals to release them into the atmosphere. That didn't seem like a very wise decision. But what if it was nefarious? I mean, we don't want to think that way. What if? What are they trying to hide? That was the big question, right? What's the distraction? Well, the Epstein list. Yeah, stuff's starting to heat up there. And if both sides of the aisle have people involved with Jeffrey Epstein, and they're in control, don't you think they're going to want to do things to make sure that they're staying in control? Just saying. Steve's a conspiracy theorist. Maybe. But there's been a lot of conspiracies over the last little while that aren't theory anymore. It gets worse. Put your house in order. Figure out your water supply. Figure out storage for water. Because what you need, like a gallon a day minimum per person per day. That's a lot of water. Foods, 2,000 calories a day. That's a suggestion, right? I know, like I was looking at MREs before I even did this. Like, has nothing to do with this. I was just looking at food storage. MREs are expensive. Food storage is expensive, especially good stuff. But it'll be priceless if we live in a society where we need to use it. It'll be to the point where you can't afford food if you have to use it at some extreme level. Now, I've been to where I didn't have a job and I didn't have a way to make money. Things just weren't going as planned, where I had to use my food storage to survive. Not a like catastrophic emergency, but my family had to eat, and we used that for like a week to eat. So it has nothing to do with crazy prepper stuff. Sometimes you need it to eat because you may not have money to buy food. I've been there. I've had to do it. You know, I wasn't really joking about gas masks. When you think about this toxic stuff coming out of the sky all over, central United States to the East Coast, kind of scary. Kind of scary, folks. Get some quality gear that's life-saving. And don't forget that stuff all has expiration dates, too. All right. Now we're going to go to the part that may make somebody unhappy. It may make, well, you never know. We don't know what it's going to do to the podcast. I might get some nasty emails. I might get some nasty comments. Who knows? I'm sure I'm already on a bunch of lists anyways, so be that as it may. This story is crazy, and it disappoints me, and it infuriates me. Absolutely nuts. U.S. Navy attacked Nord Stream pipeline, says Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh. Do you guys remember what happened with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline? It mysteriously blew up after the invasion of Russia into the Ukraine. Well, this particular journalist says it was the United States. And if this is true, it's crazy. It is not good. The destruction of... I'm just going to read this whole story. You're just going to have to bear with me. This is from... Wow. It's from the Socialists, my friends. The International Committee of the Fourth International. World Socialist website. But it is in English. The destruction of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline between Russia and Germany was a terror attack carried out by the U.S. Navy in a mission planned before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, according to the report by a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh, published on Wednesday. On September 26, a series of explosions destroyed the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. By the way, this was February 9th of this year. Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines, which shipped natural gas from Russia to Germany. While no one had publicly admitted to responsibility, U.S. officials have expressed satisfaction at the pipeline's destruction. Seymour Hersh is one of the world's leading investigative journalists who exposed the My Lai massacre during Vietnam War. He also contributed to revealing the Watergate scandal and prisoner abuse at Abu Ghraib. While Hersh, as usual, does not report his sources, and his accusations cannot be independently verified, His reporting has been confirmed again and again in the past. So he was accurate in the past, but they're casting shade on his report now. This is from Hersh. Last June, the Navy divers operation under the cover of widely publicized midsummer NATO exercise known as the Baltops 22 planned a remotely triggered explosive that 3 months later destroyed 3 of the 4 Nord Stream pipelines, according to the source with direct knowledge to the operation and planning. The terrorist attack on Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines destroyed civilian infrastructure valued at over $20 billion. It resulted in the single largest spill. Okay, listen to this. If this is true, listen to this. It resulted in the single largest spill of methane gas in human history, releasing the equivalent of 14.6 million tons of CO2 with major climate impact. The attack contributed to a spike in energy prices through Europe and the entire world. In congressional testimony, Undersecretary of State of Political Affairs Victoria Nuland said, "I think the administration is very gratified to know that the Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea." These statements strongly suggest that the U.S. and its allies viewed the attack favorably. They also made it appear likely that the attack may have been directed by Washington through an intermediary such as the Ukraine Special Forces. According to Hersh, however, the attack was not only planned by the United States, but actively conducted by the U.S. Navy. If true, what occurred was a staggeringly reckless attack on Germany, a NATO ally to the U.S. The United States fought against Germany in 2 world wars, in which hundreds of thousands of American soldiers were killed. In 1917, the United States nominally entered World War I in response to the German policy of indiscriminately striking American civilian ships with submarines. In his report, now I know you guys are probably don't want me to hear this or hear me read this, but I think it's important that I read the text so you know it's not me coming up with anything. This is the source. In his report, Hersh explained the economic significance of the Nord Stream pipelines. Listen to these numbers and understand why I'm frustrated. From its earliest days, Nord Stream 1 was seen by Washington and its anti-Russian NATO partners as a threat to Western dominance. The direct route, which bypassed any need to transit Ukraine, has been the boon for German economy, which enjoyed an abundance of cheap Russian natural gas, enough to run its factories and heat its homes, while enabling German distributors to sell excess gas at a profit throughout Western Europe. Money, money, money. American political fears were real. Russian President Putin would now have an additional and much needed major source of income, and Germany and the rest of Western Europe would become addicted to low-cost natural gas supplied by Russia, while diminishing European reliance on America. Follow the money, folks. Follow the money. As long as Europe remained dependent on the pipelines for cheap natural gas... Hold on, I gotta check something real quick. Okay. Hold on just a second. So I almost timed out on... Oh, come on now. Sorry. Let's try this again here. Now back to the story at hand. As long as Europe remained dependent on the pipelines for cheap natural gas, hold on, let me check again. Okay, yep. Washington was afraid that countries like Germany would be reluctant to supply Ukraine with money and weapons to defeat Russia. Hersh does not note the following shutoff of European natural gas imports from Russia. The U.S. massively... Okay, listen to this too. This is mind-boggling. Harsh does not note that the following shutoff of European natural gas imports from Russia. The U.S. massively increased natural gas exports to Europe, leading to record profits for U.S. energy companies. Now, Biden is like, he always gets pissed off about, oh, these gas companies are making so much money. Record profits. He created the record profits for these gas companies, and then he's berating them for such. Interesting. As one European official said to Politico, the fact is, if you look at it soberly, the country that is most profiting from the war is the U.S. because they are selling more gas and at higher prices, and because they are selling more weapons. Hirsch reports that plans for the American attack on Nord Stream 2 were already in the making ahead of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Another thing that he writes, on December of 21, 2 months before Russia tanks rolled into Ukraine, the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan convened a meeting with a newly formed task force, men and women from the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the CIA, and the State Treasury. Not sure why they were there. And asked for recommendations about how to respond to Putin's impending invasion. Hirsch claims, his name is Hirsch, not Harsh. Hirsch claims that Sullivan proposed the plan for the destruction. Gosh, I cannot read lately. The plan for the destruction, and that he was delivering on the desires of the president. Describing reasoning among the war planners, Hirsch writes, "It is not kiddie stuff," the source said. "If the attack were traceable to the United States, it is an act of war." Wake up, folks, wake up. On February 7th, ahead of the invasion, the U.S. President Joe Biden declared publicly, if Russia invades, there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it, end quote, by President Biden. According to Hirsch, Biden's statement shocked the planners of the operation. Several of those involved in the planning of the pipeline mission were dismayed by what they viewed as indirect references to the attack. And this is another quote from one of the sources. "It was like putting an atomic bomb on the ground in Tokyo and telling the Japanese that we were going to detonate it," the source said. The plan was for the operation to be executed post-invasion and not advertised publicly. Biden simply did not get it or ignored it. The U.S. Navy would, according to Hirsch, plant the explosive during the Baltops 22 military exercise, which involved dozens of warships and thousands of personnel. The United States Navy published a press release regarding deep-sea diving operations during the exercise, including a picture of a deep-sea diver. While the explosives were planted during the exercise, according to Hirsch, the White House ultimately decided not to trigger the explosions immediately, and instead allowed them to be remotely detonated in September. Hirsch's report included rebuttals from the White House, which declared in response to his story, "This is false and completely fiction," and from the CIA, which declared, "This claim is completely and utterly false." Whistleblower Snowden, remember Edward Snowden, that guy? Yeah. Well, he shared this article on Twitter and responded to the denials from the White House. "Can you think of any examples from history of a secret operation that the White House was responsible for, but strongly denied? Besides, you know that little mass surveillance kerfuffle?" Snowden was referring to the legal NSA mass surveillance program created after the 9/11 terror attacks, which he publicly exposed in 2013. Meanwhile, the entire U.S. media has treated the attacks as if it were unsolved mystery, despite the statements of the U.S. and NATO officials openly welcoming the bombings, continuing a wall of silence. The New York Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal have not reported on Hirsch's article or even the denial from the White House. Interesting, don't you think? Interesting. Now, I know that part may not have much to do with your personal security and the security of your home and family, or does it? Or does it? This is not cool. If Hersh's stuff is true, we could be in a serious problem within this year. What are you going to do to defend yourself? The United States government is continually making messes and making them worse while they're trying to disarm you and tell you you can't have a gas stove or a gas furnace. Oh, yeah, I know they haven't said it, but I mean, one step leads to another. What can you do to defend your family right now? You can make your voice heard. That's step one. Actually, no, that's not step one. Step one is to be a good damn American. Understand the Constitution. Understand why the country came to be. Understand the Founding Fathers. Understand the contemporary documents which led to the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That's step one. Step two is getting involved. Not in violence. Don't be asinine. Your mind and your voice are the greatest weapon that we have. The other things, guns, whatever, knives, jujitsu, those are tools. Your mind is the weapon. You need to exercise that thing. Once you arm your mind with knowledge, then you go to the school board meetings. Then you go to your city council meetings. Then you go run for office. You call your senators, your representation, your governor, your mayor. I don't care who it is. You make your voice heard. Stuff like this is careless, and they're playing with our lives because they don't care about you and me. They care about the power that they have. I used to not be a conspiracy theorist. My mom would talk about stuff when I was a kid and I'd be like, whatever. The president would not do stuff like that. Yet presidents have done stuff like this as long as I've been alive anyways. You can go back to Kennedy, back to FDR. I don't know when it started. But it needs to stop. And the only way it will stop is if citizens, normal everyday citizens like you and me and the guy next door and his wife and their friends stand up. It has got to stop. Another thing you can do with your mind to keep that knife, your wit, and your knowledge sharp is quit wasting time on stuff that doesn't matter. I listen to the modern music. I look at, I didn't watch the Super Bowl. I guess I watched the last probably 5 minutes of the Super Bowl. It's all garbage. How was the halftime show any good? I didn't watch it. I saw highlights from it. How is that entertaining? How? It's garbage. It's filth. Use your time a different way. I know I have to. I need to, right? I mean, it's pot calling the kettle black right now. I've got to do better. But we all need to be doing better. Stuff like that last story is despicable. It's disgusting. And yes, I know the United States is not the perfect, civilization to ever exist. Yep, we've got some really bad things in our history. Absolutely. But we've also overcome a lot of terrible things in history. All it takes is good people to stand up and say enough. How do you stand up against somebody that's trying to kill you? You use the tools that you have. You stop being a victim. And you fight with everything you have. And you die fighting if you have to. That's the instinct of humans, right? Our survival instinct has been from thousands of years, right? It's ingrained in our DNA. I know I said I don't call for violence. That's still not a call for violence. But you can be someone who survives and somebody who thrives without having to use violence unless necessary. We the people, the first 3 words in the United States Constitution, we the people. That wasn't just parlance, wasn't just some fancy way to make a big W. The founders understood who the power belonged to. We the people. And for too long have we trusted local representation all the way up to our national representation to have our best interest in mind. And our apathy has put us in a position which is not good. You know, we talk about Cooper's color codes of awareness, right? What is the worst color to be in? Is white. Why? Because you are oblivious. You are overly comfortable. You are not paying attention to anything around you. We should always be in yellow. We should always be aware of what's going on around us. We should always be able and be willing to understand where the exits are in case something bad happens. Or orange. I guess orange is where we should be, right? We don't want to have to be in condition red. If we have to go to red, it's too late. God forbid we fall into the black, where we just shut down and become a victim. You guys are smarter than you give yourself credit for. And maybe this episode is way too heavy for some of you listeners. I get it. And this is not, the norm for the Range Minded podcast. It's not. I get it. I mean, it is no secret that I'm a political minded person. No secret. And if this is too much for you, if you think I'm too crazy, so be it. So be it. But I will not sit down and be quiet. I am not raised that way. And I do not raise my kids that way. I will not sit down and shut up. If I see something that is terrible and disgusting that our government is responsible for, allegedly, how can I not share that with you? How can I be such a dick as to not bring some of this stuff up to light? Because it all comes down to your personal survival. It is relevant to what we talk about. It is relevant to becoming a good steward of the Second Amendment, because if you're a good steward of the Second Amendment, you are a good steward to the entire Constitution. This country was founded on free principles of freedom. And your freedom is being eroded. Once your Second Amendment's gone, you think they're going to take care of you in a good way? Do you think they're going to worry about your speech? They're already trying to censor speech. And then what? What's next? Your freedom to vote? Your freedom to a free trial? A speedy trial? It's a downhill slope. We're past the slippery slope analogy. We're just getting right close to a cliff. And if we don't stand up and make our voices heard, we're going to be held to account by our children and grandchildren. Wake up, friends. Wake up. I told you this episode was going to get dicey. Told you. All right, friends. We'll just stop here. Okay? We'll just stop here. I need to leave you on a high note. Now, I told you in the beginning of this episode that my dad passed away. You would think that was the lowest part of my life up to this point. And it was hard. I'm not going to pretend it was easy. It was hard. I remember thinking of a kid, thinking as a child, I remember as a child I was thinking about this day coming. Not that I wanted my dad to die, no. But thinking how hard it was going to be when that time comes. And it was hard. It is hard. But through this trial, I shouldn't say it's a trial, it's part of life. Through this stage of my life of pain and whatever you want to call it, sadness, frustration, you, my friends, were there. Posted on social media. Tons of my everyday friends, people I know that were friended on the socials, offered their heartfelt condolences. Phone calls, text messages. Awesome. But what surprised me were the people that I did friend that we have never met face to face, offering condolences. People that didn't have to, people that knew that I wouldn't know if they cared or not. You guys. The amount of support and care blew me away. Yes, this is the uplifting part of the show. I promise. Need to get rid of that cough. You guys are amazing. You guys showed me that in our darkest hour, when we feel like we need to be alone, but shouldn't be, that we don't have to be. That's my stomach growling, by the way. You guys showed me that it's okay to reach out. It's okay to be there for somebody that you do not know, just in case they need somebody to talk to. Every one of you guys know somebody else that's going through something. Maybe you don't know, maybe you just have a hunch that somebody's dealing with something. Follow that hunch. Reach out to them. I know we always say take somebody shooting. Maybe just make a phone call. Be the light that you want others to be. Be there for somebody who needs you. Because you don't know how that might help them. And for hell's sakes, don't dismiss somebody when they want to help you. I'm just as guilty of it. Because they can just, how do I want to say this? They can receive blessings. Call it karma, call it whatever you want. They can receive something out of service that's pretty hard to attain without it. Be the light. All right, we'll stop there. Friends, thank you for taking your time to listen to this podcast. Tell me what you thought about it. Be honest. I take constructive criticism as well as whatever. Just be honest of it. If you liked what you heard, give us some kind of review, whatever, platform you're listening to. There's a way to give us a good rating, star rating, whatever, thumbs up, and share it with your friends. Share us with your friends. We have a goal of getting 100 new listeners every month this year. And that won't happen if you don't help us, honestly. I'm asking for a service project from you guys. Boy, that sounds really needy, doesn't it? Oh well. Be safe. Plan for things that you don't want to happen. Plan for the worst. Pray for the best. Be that light to somebody who needs you. Appreciate you guys. Stay safe. Take somebody shooting. See you guys. Oh yeah, be good stewards of the Second Amendment. We need you. Good night.